Hey class, welcome back. I hope you guys are doing well. This is now our fourth PowerPoint on the Roman Empire. So we're going to have 6 PowerPoints total. This is our fourth one for the Roman Empire. Before we get into the PowerPoint, I did want to just make a mention about the study guide coming up for the next exam. This is Sunday, and I'm finishing up these recordings, and they'll be up for tonight for you to be able to watch this week. But the study guide is going to be coming out on Thursday, so it will be coming out. It's just not on Moodle right yet today. I do want to finish up the study guide with some of the questions that will be on the exam, and they're from these PowerPoints, which you're going to be seeing here today, next session, and the session following, which will be our last session on Rome. So just be patient with me, please, and I'll have the study guide up for you by the end of the week, so you'll be able to answer those questions, and you'll have a good number of days to answer those questions, so you will be ready for the exam next week. So today's PowerPoint, it's about one person. It's about Julius Caesar. We are going to be looking at his life and some of the things that take place with him and some reforms that he did of the Roman Empire. He was not the first emperor of Rome, like many believe. Julius Caesar was before the first emperor. His son, his adopted son, would become the first emperor of Rome. But Julius Caesar, basically laid the foundation for the emperors to come. So it's a very interesting look at a very well-known man in the Roman Empire, Julius Caesar. Okay, class, we're going to now have the PowerPoint on part number 4 for ancient Rome. As I mentioned in the intro, we're going to be talking about Julius Caesar today. He was born in 100 BC and he lived till 44 BC. And many people think that he was the first emperor of Rome, but he was not. His son actually was the first emperor, but Julius Caesar, a very well-known man, and he did many things to really set up for the emperorship and kind of give the Roman Empire a direction. So we're going to be talking about Julius Caesar today. You can see a couple of pictures there of Julius's bust and a statue of him. Okay, so some facts about Julius Caesar. He was from a patrician family. That means wealthy, elite, could have been aristocratic, involved in the government. Patrician family. Remember, patrician means father. His father died when he was 16 years old, making him the head of the family. So quite a responsibility put on him for an elite family. And he fought in the Gallic Wars, and that was wars that Rome fought against the land of Gaul, which is today's France. And recognizing that wealth can be gained through conquest, he went and left Rome for Gaul in 58 BC to fight in the Gallic Wars. Defeated tribes there and secured the borders of Rome, so it'll be like the northern part of Roman Empire. He became a popular general with his troops, and one of the things that he did, which is interesting, is that he would hold public spectacles where there would be a lot of food and gladiators would fight one another. Don't think of the Colosseum yet. The Colosseum in Rome was not built yet. That's going to be built later on, around 70 to 80 AD. So these are just public spectacles. They would have games, and gladiators would fight. He spent a large amount of money on hosting these spectacles, and they became very popular to see gladiators fight, and gladiators fight wild animals. And these public spectacles built him a reputation and popularity in which he used to be elected to government posts. And the spectacles kept him in the public eye, and so what he began to do is he began to push for social reforms. And when we think of some of the reforms coming up, many of them are quite liberal, wanting to really change society, the government changing society, to have a time of peace, to be able to bring economic equality and just a better way of life for people. And some of them were quite liberal, which would cause problems with the ruling elite. The First Triumvirate, Julius Caesar formed this with two wealthy consuls, Crassus and Pompey. We'll see a picture of them here. The First Triumvirate, you see Pompey on the left, Caesar in the center, Crassus on the right. That's Julius Caesar in the center. So these three guys, they come together and they have an alliance, and it's called the First Triumvirate. Let's talk about that for a moment. Julius Caesar formed these with the other two wealthy consuls, Marcus Licinius Crassus. He was the wealthiest man in the Roman Empire. So, again, very well-known, popular, wealthy. And another man, Gnaeus Pompey. These three men formed the First Triumvirate. The two men on the bottom there, Crassus and Pompey, they were actually rivals to one another, and Julius Caesar negotiated an alliance between them so that they all came together to basically rule Rome. And what Julius Caesar did was he used the triumvirate as a springboard to greater power. And the way he did that was he would use Crassus and Pompey to push his, meaning Julius Caesar, his agendas in the Senate. And so Julius Caesar was able to gain more power through this triumvirate. The triumvirate actually dissolved after Crassus died in battle, and Pompey declared Julius's governorship in Gaul terminated. When that happened, Julius was actually in Gaul. He had gone to what is modern-day France. He had gone to Gaul, and while in Gaul, Pompey basically said, Julius, you're no longer governor of Gaul. So what happened was Pompey ordered Julius to come home back to Rome to answer for some debts that he incurred. But instead, Julius Caesar invades Rome with his troops from Gaul. Okay, so coming from the north, back into Italy, invading Rome. And there's a famous phrase called crossing the Rubicon. And that means you've crossed a line that you cannot return. Once you've crossed that line, the consequences are going to follow. So that's actually a phrase that we use sometimes today. It's an older phrase, crossing the Rubicon. But really where we get this phrase from is Julius Caesar's crossing the Rubicon River. And this was a very small river that was seen as the border of the city of Rome and its surrounding territories. So if you cross the Rubicon, you have now entered into the immediate area of the city of Rome. It's still out in the country. If you look at a map where the Rubicon River is, it's quite a distance from the city itself, but that is like the city's land. And so if you've crossed the Rubicon, you have basically invaded Rome. Well, Pompey sees that Julius Caesar has crossed the Rubicon, and he flees with his forces, and they are defeated in the Battle of Pharsalus. So Julius Caesar wins the day, and Pompey actually escapes to Egypt. And interesting story about Pompey, as he is getting off of his ship in Egypt, he sets foot on Egyptian soil, and the Egyptians come up to him, and they know that Julius has been trying to track him down. There's word got to the Egyptians that Julius Caesar was trying to capture Pompey, and so the Egyptians kill Pompey as he steps onto Egyptian soil. And so Julius Caesar then continues on, and he enters into Egypt. And we're not going to go into it in detail today. You can look at it in the book or study it later, but that's where we get the story of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra. So we just don't have time to dig into that very detailed and dramatic story of Julius Caesar and Cleopatra, and we're going to see a little bit with Mark Antony coming up. So if you want to look into that further, then you can go ahead and read the book or find some other resource to study that. But this is the time period where we see Julius Caesar and Cleopatra from Egypt. Here's a picture of Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon. And if you go to the Rubicon River today, it looks like this. So it's not a very big river at all, but if you cross this little waterway, you have entered into the surrounding area of the city of Rome, so you are basically invading the city of Rome. Okay, so Julius Caesar as dictator. He named himself dictator in 46 BC, and the shout, "Hail Caesar," was coined, and they began to hail him. And he was also called the father of his country, meaning like he founded the Roman Empire from that time forward. Again, he is not the first emperor, but his son would be. So he really gave a direction to the empire. And so he did this through some of his reforms. And like I said, some of them are looked at as kind of liberal, such as relieving debts when someone has incurred debt and another party comes in and says, "Oh, you no longer owe that money." That relieves the debt. So unfortunately, the person that loaned the money is out of their money. So relieving debts, increased size of the Senate to represent more citizens and represent the lower classes. And what he was doing, he was building a base platform from the lower classes to allow him to continue to rule with a popular rule. He reformed the Roman calendar. He constructed local government to rule effectively. And so one of the issues that the Roman Empire was struggling with was they had so much land now after the Punic Wars and gaining other lands. They had so much land to rule that they needed to set up a structure to rule this land. And so they had local governments formed. And we're going to see it in a slide coming up. But remember Pontius Pilate, who tried Jesus, he was a Roman governor of Judea. So you see the local governments were set up across the land to help rule effectively. He rebuilt Carthage and Corinth as Roman cities. Remember, Carthage was basically destroyed when Rome invaded Carthage during the Third Punic War, and there was a massive slaughter, and all these slaves were taken back to Rome. So Julius Caesar rebuilt Carthage. It was a very strategic place for a trade outpost in North Africa. He gave citizenship to foreigners. He gave land to war veterans, and he also gave small properties to the poor so they could have some land to work and it would be theirs. A couple more reforms. He had major building projects in Rome which reduced urban unemployment. He organized a police force in Rome. And he did not displace conquered peoples, but gave them citizenship. And that was one of the ideas that we saw when looking at the reasons the Roman Empire grew and geographically grew and became so powerful. One of them we talked about was basically the Romans, they passed through an area and basically just enveloped the area into the Roman Empire. And they just passed through, and those people became Roman citizens because now Rome owned that area. So these are some reforms that Julius Caesar did. Because of these reforms, he became very popular, and he began ruling by edict and was completely circumventing the Senate. So now we see, obviously, some characteristics of a dictator. There's a government set up, but the dictator just goes around them and starts making rulings and decisions without the government. And with his popularity, he was able to do this. People supported him. Okay, so Julius Caesar became a dictator in 46 BC. Well, he didn't last very long after that. He was killed in a coup on the Ides of March, and that's March 15th, is known as the Ides of March, 44 BC. The Ides of March was a Roman religious holiday, pagan religion. So on March 15th, 44 BC, he's killed in a coup, which means some of the people that were quote-unquote on his side rebelled against him and killed him. What's interesting is that he was planning on leaving Rome 3 days later on March 18th to invade modern-day Iraq, so to gain more territory. But he was not able to do that because they killed him on March 15th. Senators Gaius Cassius Longinus, there's a name for you, Gaius Cassius Longinus, and Marcus Junius Brutus led a band of men to assassinate Julius Caesar. Interesting point is that Marcus Junius Brutus was a lover to Julius Caesar's mother. So this wasn't just some kind of like stranger that came up and killed and assassinated Julius Caesar. There was definitely some power players involved. These are senators. There's a band of senators, actually, that did this assassination. One of them very intimate with Julius's mother. The band of senators, which most sources agree that there was most likely 60 senators that were involved in the attack of Julius Caesar in the Basilica of Pompey the Great. That's another man, not the Pompey we were just talking about at the First Triumvirate. This is a different Pompey, Pompey the Great. He's in the Basilica, which is basically like almost like a little temple. Sometimes churches are called basilicas, but here this is a little temple to Pompey the Great. He is stabbed 23 times, and he died at the statue's feet, at Pompey the Great's feet. The statue, he died there after being stabbed 23 times. And there's an artistic representation. You can see here my arrow. Where's my arrow? There it is. So here's the feet of the statue. And here's Caesar. And you can see all the knives coming down at him. This guy's got like a little sword. So Caesar is about to be killed. Okay, the aftermath of Julius Caesar, his death, the liberators, which were the senators, they called themselves the liberators. They actually allowed Marcus Antonius, a.k.a. Mark Antony, to live. And Mark Antony was looked at as an apparent heir to Julius Caesar, but not the legal heir. We'll get to that later. But the liberators allowed him to live, which is going to come back and haunt them. He allied himself with Octavian. Okay, so Mark Antony allies himself with Octavian. Now, Octavian is Julius Caesar's adopted son, and Octavian is later going to be renamed Caesar Augustus. Okay, so he allies himself with Octavian. Mark Antony and Octavian then attack Brutus and Longinus. And Brutus and Longinus are defeated in 42 BC at the Battle of Philippi. So we are going to be talking next PowerPoint session about Caesar Augustus. That should be a very familiar name from the Bible. With Joseph and Mary at the time of Jesus' birth. So Caesar Augustus. Okay, so that's it for this PowerPoint session. I'll see you just in a second. Okay, class, that's it for today's PowerPoint. I'll see you next time.